Gremlin 64 presents a Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon 64 play guide and review. In this episode we'll be taking a look at Percy the Potty Pigeon, developed and published by Gremlin Graphics and released in August 1984. This game was written and developed by Anthony Crowther, with some help from his then girlfriend and now wife Lisa, and also with a little help by a certain Ben Dalglish. The title tune you can hear is the theme to All Creatures Great and Small, and no, that wasn't coded by Ben Dalglish. Let's press fire and check out the game itself. In Potty Pigeon we play unsurprisingly as a pigeon, and by using our potty powers of persuasion we can fire our droplets onto the screens of those cars and send them spinning at high speed off the road. That will give us massive points. We can also use our droplets to get rid of the wildlife along the level. You can see the butterflies don't harm us, and the kestrels there, they don't harm us either. The only thing which can harm us are the cars. The aim of every level is to feather our nest and hopefully bring a female courting. And to do that we have to find the twigs and the materials to feather that nest, and wouldn't you have guessed it, they lie directly in the middle of the road in between all this traffic. Luckily we can use our chronic bowel complaint to remove those, and using an infinite supply of bird droppings we can crap all over those and find our way to those twigs. Once we get those twigs we have to land on the branch next to the nest, and then our item will be returned in there. And after 10 items have been collected, then it's on to the second level. We are given 2 lives to begin with, and I don't think you can collect any more lives during the game, so you really have to be on your best flight mode behaviour. But on this first level we are invulnerable to everything. In fact, the butterflies will even give us 10 points if we collide with those. But sometimes it can be difficult finding the branch there. And yes, you have to find 1 pixel on that spot, and that will act as the collision detection. And as soon as we collide with that 1 pixel hitbox, we can then return those twigs to the nest. The first few twigs can always be found somewhere near the nest, and then you will have to go further afield and scout those and pick those up from a further distance and bring those all the way back. Unfortunately we cannot press fire while we have the twigs in hand, otherwise we'll drop those and they will be returned all the way back. So that collection point is fixed, I'm afraid, so if you drop those twigs they will materialise all the way back to where you pick those up, and as we go further and further afield that becomes more difficult. So you can see there we cannot fire with the twigs, and at this first easy level it's not too hard and the kestrels really don't bother us. We can use our fire powers to blow away those kestrels and everything else which lies in our way, and so it's usually a good idea to blow away whatever is in our vicinity before we carry on. And you can see the kestrels only have a certain height at which they fly, so if you duck underneath those or take evasive action, then those kestrels aren't very hard to beat. You can see at the top there we are only given a certain amount of time to complete these levels, and we can see it's over halfway out already. But you can see our nest is virtually complete, and 1 more bombing run later we should be able to find the lining we need, and that should complete this level. You can see just Micro in the background. That's the premises Gremlin Graphics used all the way back all those years ago, and this was the first Gremlin Graphics release on the Commodore 64. And you can see those cars there are a little on the blocky side, but on this second level we gain a plane, and as long as we don't collide with the main engine of that plane we'll be fine. but we also find a hawk, and unlike the kestrel, the hawk will follow us around the level, and if we collide with that while we have the twigs, we will lose those, and they will go all the way back. So I pressed fire there, but luckily at the beginning of the level there are plenty littered all around the road. A good tip as we begin our bombing run is to get rid of that pigeon hawk or whatever it is, and that gives us a clean run all the way down to those twigs. And again, as long as we avoid those cars and get those things out of the way, sometimes yes, we can perform some great maneuvers there, and at this stage we can't collide with anything, otherwise our maneuvers will be in vain. So as the game continues, our flight dynamics really come into their own, and the controller will have to be maximised if the player wants to get through this game, and they really can zip around the screen very fast indeed. A little background on this game. Percy the Potty Pigeon was developed by Anthony Crowther, who I first came across with Kilowatt, developed with Alligator software in 1983, and also Blagger in 1983. Definitely remember Kilowatt. And he also created Monty Mole in 1984 for Gremlin, which then went on to spawn a number of sequels. I also remember R1D1 in 1986, and Fernandez Must Die in 1988 for the Imageworks label, as well as Bomboozle on the Amiga and on the 64 in 1988. Anthony Crowther then continued on the Amiga with games such as Captain Planet, Captive and Liberation, as well as conversions of Bomboozle. But Anthony Crowther there with a small legacy on the Amiga for his master creations, but on the 64 this thing went under the radar, and you can say this game is pretty well designed and the graphics certainly smooth. Maybe not very smooth because I've used a Screen Ripper which only rips at 30 frames per second, and actually this game runs at 50, but I hope you can see this action is packed, and sometimes the player can take huge risks there. Well, that didn't pay off at all. You can see the hawk will follow us and it will track us around the map, so I used my pigeon powers to poop that thing out of the way, and that's what you have to do in this game. Basically evade all the objects and crap everything else out of the way. But on level 2 you can see our access is blocked, and so we have to strategically avoid that bird and somehow collide with the perch next to the nest, and by leading that afield hopefully we can get that in there, and then that only leaves maybe another one to find. I'd say the graphics are reasonably well drawn for 1984, certainly better than Kilowatt, but the gameplay is action-packed, and the cutesy graphics of this game belie the fact that this is a hard game, and this smooth scrolling landscape is nowhere near as huge as Foxfire's back, which took literally hours to pad around from one side to the other. So this level is repeated over and over again. It does not change from level to level, but at least it's fairly short, and that at least saves us from getting lost. Unfortunately, it is easy to misplace that nest there, and I've just flown straight by it. Luckily, using the hovering above the cars technique, we can speed across the landscape, and it only takes seconds to get from one side to the other. And then it's back to the chronic diarrhea. So this game has two halves, the crap-athon and the avoid 'em up section when we do have those twigs in our claws. So let's grab those and let's take the final twigs back to the nest, and then let's start at level 3. So let's take our time, and you can see by taking our time there we are almost invulnerable. Now the action becomes even more tense on level 3 as we now face rats, which we have to poop all over and crap on to get around and to get those out of the way, because those things can jump up and grab our twigs and grab us into the process. So we have to avoid the rats and the eagle and the plane and everything else on the level. So taking a look at the scores, Commodore User gave this game 40% in November 1984. The current score on the lemon64.com website is 60%. Personal Computer Games gave this game 80%. Your Commodore also gave this 80%. And Commodore Horizons, which is a magazine I've never actually heard of, gave this 9 out of 10. That's 90% in October 1984. I think the action is packed, but the difficulty curve is rather steep. And yes, you really have to have dexterous controls to get far in this game. The music is a little bland, but at least that's in the background and isn't too annoying, and the sound effects are okay but not amazing. The graphics are reasonably well drawn, as I say, and the playability is actually pretty well done indeed. So as a pigeon simulator, I think this stands up pretty well, and the unlimited power mechanics certainly help this game no end. And I like the fact that there's no shitting allowed on the bedding before it goes into the nest. Unfortunately, I've just died, and that's game over. This ending music was created by Ben Dalglish, his very first C64 tune that he ever created, and of course he went on to much bigger things than this. Thank you once again for joining me on another Lemon64 play guide and review for this very first shit 'em up in the whole world. Although you probably wouldn't call it that to the author's face.
So I prefer Anthony, because if I do Tony, people think it could be an Anthony, or I hate Anthony. If I do Anthony, I know it's me. And also if you Google Tony Crowther, there's lots of them, but there's only one Anthony. So.
I was reviewing Potty Pigeon last night.
Okay.
With the world's first shit 'em up. So, I mean, what inspired me?